In this, the world of writing seems a bit like our planet Earth. The oceans that separate land masses, as it turns out, also join them. The issue then becomes one of navigation, not one of separation. That's from Stephen P. Whitty's Context-Text Intertext, Towards a Constructivist Semiotic of Writing. Whitty was a Knight Professor of Rhetoric and Composition at Kent State University for the last 11 years of his life until he passed away in 2004. Whitty's work lives on, and particularly struck me during my seminar on representation course my senior year at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. The issue then becomes one of navigation, not one of separation. As I discovered in that class, there are hundreds of theories regarding representation in communication, but it never seemed to follow one prescriptive definition. The singular underlying theme throughout all of the theories was cultural context or cultural ecology. It's the belief that all language is rooted in culture, their customs, and can't be explained without referring back to these indicators. Just like biological ecology, cultural ecology studies the relationship between organisms, which is us, and their physical surroundings, so culture, class, hobbies, bias, location, and love. How can we relate these theories to the real world? And where is this representation taking place? When? And who? We'll explore these topics and more in Investigation into Representation. I'm Ellen Barrett, and thanks for listening. Our first investigation into representation leads us to downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Population 51,522 as of 2013, nestled in between the Mississippi River and beautiful bluffs.
So we're in downtown Main Street Inc. right now.
Sure.
And DMI is one of our partners, one of Here's partners.
That's Assistant Professor Arielle Beaujeau.
So my name is Arielle Beaujeau. I work at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse in the history department, and they hired me as a public historian. So that's a person that brings history to the public.
Beaujeau's been at UWL for nearly 3 years and is spearheading a project called Here.
So to the public, this is what Here looks like. It's orange signs on the street with a 1-800 number. And when you call that number, you hear a story, and it's all first-person narrative, of the space you're standing in. And as I said, it's all first-person narrative, so it has to be a story that happened to the person that's telling you the story. And an ideal Here story would be a story that relates a story that's personal, but then relates it to the community or the downtown area as well.
And as for those who call into the free number...
And then after you listen to the story, the system has it so that you can leave a story of your own. So the listeners become active as participants in leaving their own story.
And it's all being produced by University of Wisconsin-La Crosse history students, who ultimately must decide which stories to include in their project. But to sort through them all, they've developed a system. First, callers can submit their story by phone or email. If the students think the story fits what they're looking for, they set up an interview on site of the story's location and have the narrator describe their location, their story, and how it relates to the greater downtown community. Then they edit the narrative and voila, it's published. Well, maybe it's not that simple. To dig a little deeper, Arielle says they hope the project provides
a sense of space and a sense of place for our downtown. The question, I think, for our mission is, what is downtown about? And how do different people experience downtown differently?
But what stories do they choose, and how? In addition to connecting the community through location in relation to everyday history, they're also aiming to represent some of the underrepresented voices of La Crosse. Like one Here story.
We have a story outside the cathedral, for example, that's from a homeless man who used to sleep in the back of the cathedral when there was a garden and a bench there.
That story is Martin Peoples, and here's his Here story.
I'm going to tell you a bedtime story. I was raised up as a Catholic. I went to parochial schools. I went to private high schools. All 12 of us did. I was adopted. When I start to be aware of my surroundings, this is my world view of people, I seen a lot of homeless people. And I told myself, hell no, I'm not going to be like that. Look at that. Disgusting. Well, I ain't got no money for you. Homelessness was learned, okay? It just not that I just, boom, became homeless. There's different survival mechanisms that you must use. All the way before I even went to school, being beat as a child was a survival issue. So, that's going to be with me all my life. The good thing out of it is I know how to survive. Well, you can say I chose the lifestyle. It's not only in La Crosse I lived this lifestyle. We're talking about almost 39 states I lived this lifestyle. The only loving part was the churches. So I slept pretty much in the street. I slept in laundromats. I slept in stairwells, in the parks. I guess my major activity was panhandling. And that's where for the next 4 years, I lived downtown. The places I mostly stayed was at the cathedral. They have it was a garden back there. Mm-hmm. They had like a chair and a table. And Father Gorman was the pastor. He did not mind. I told him I was Catholic from the start. And so I built up a rapport with him. So he let me sleep out there. And that was winter, summer. When it got too cold, I'd find me a stairwell. There were some people in the downtown area that would even bring me blankets, if they caught me, sleeping on the landing.
Professor Beaujeu explains.
But he tells that story, and he also talks about how he doesn't feel very connected with the community of La Crosse because he's homeless and he doesn't feel that he has a space here or a place here.
The bad side was that I was, somewhat still an outcast, because, get a job, do this, do that. So I had the college background, I had the homeless background, I had the jail background. I've been in their shoes, I've been out of their shoes. My name is Martin Jude Peoples. I live here at 1918 Devon Street. I stayed here for 4.5 years. My role to the community is not really much. That's about as truthful as I can get. I don't really have a role. Mostly, I'm just undecided what's going to happen in my life. Particularly, I am disabled. What is my sense of direction? I don't know if I have one. I used to.
The unique part of this project? It doesn't simply represent one person's experience. It's anyone who can provide a diverse understanding of a location.
But in that same space, of course, as this project continues, you could get stories of people who got married in that space, people who found love or found religion in that space or lost their religion in that space.
As Sean Hall, author of This Means This, This Means That, might explain, the project is investigating the role of conceptual structures in local history, highlighting abstract concepts which apply to all disciplines, subjects, and cultures, such as truth and falsity, sameness and difference, subjectivity and objectivity, appearance and reality, problem and solution, and meaningful and meaningless. They're concepts that are not discussed in everyday conversation, but maybe they should be. Professor Beaujeu hopes
to create a community conversation around how different people experience space and why it is that people experience space in such a different way.
And this isn't the first program to provide collective experiences to the community.
It's something that originated in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a man named Sean McAuliffe who's coming in a couple of weeks. In Toronto, it's called Murmur. So it started 12 years ago in Toronto, and I've known about it, because I lived there. And 2 summers ago, I met with Sean, and I said, I want to do a Murmur in La Crosse. And he said, okay, but we're retiring the project. and you need to start it over again. So I renamed it. It's recreated, but essentially it's his idea.
So what's next for Here Here? The project will continue over the next 5 years, with new and old students collecting more interviews and collecting reaction from the community, especially the underrepresented groups, asking things like
what other sorts of stories they would like, who the people that could add those stories, how they feel they're being represented by the project, fairly or unfairly, like help us make this what you want this to be.
Next episode, we'll speak with a student and coordinator of the Here Here project and investigate how the project is representing the university and how she hopes the project will push La Crosse to become a more diverse and accepting location.
This is a really cool teaching moment for the city, and I really hope they take it.
But not everyone is so excited about the progressive project, many believing it's not accurate and doesn't represent how they see La Crosse. That's coming up in the series. Thanks for listening to Investigation into Representation. I'm Ellen Barrett, and keep navigating.